Whether you're taking the IELTS academic or the general version of the test, I know that these 15 tips can actually help increase your scores manyfold just by incorporating certain small minor changes in your preparation. These strategies have been evolved after working with hundreds of thousands of clients, and I'm giving you in this video for free. So pay attention because it's very important and it can actually help increase your score. But before we begin, I'd like to let you know that there's a lot of wrong information on YouTube about the IELTS test. There's a lot of people making videos about the test who have personally not even taken the test themselves. I'd request you to follow this channel for the most genuine advice, and you can always trust in the process because we've worked with hundreds of thousands of cases. The number one tip I have for you is to know the format. Even if you are an A+ user of English language, the only reason where you would fail is essentially because you may not know the format to begin with. So know the format of the test, know what they're going to ask you. And for the reading section, when we talk about the format, there's going to be 60 minutes on the timer. You're going to have a total of 40 questions, and those 40 questions are going to be divided amongst 3 reading passages. Point number 2 I have for you is to practice from the official material only. A lot of people out there will tell you to read research papers, read articles, read newspapers. This is only driving your efforts away from studying the 100% focused material on the IELTS. Now, why would you want to do that when you actually can focus 100% of the effort on questions that might actually appear on the IELTS, right? Try to avoid that. Try to avoid people who are telling you to study newspapers or content which is not directly created by the IELTS test makers. I would recommend you follow Cambridge set of books. The IELTS set of books Cambridge has published with 4 tests per book, and they have about 17 books right now for the academic and about 15 books for the general, I believe. And you can actually get all of those books pretty easily. I even have a link in the description where you can get them for a discounted price. Otherwise, just get these books and start working through actual tests which have actually appeared on the IELTS, right? And you generally get that practice, which basically, you really need to crack the IELTS in the best possible way. Point number 3, know the questions. Now that you know the format of the test, now that you know which material to follow, you need to know the question types, because what happens is, take a look at this question or take a look at this one. If you understand these questions right now and you're reading them for the very first time and you've not taken the IELTS, you've not prepared for it before, these would be very new to you. And you would spend probably more time understanding the format of these questions and how to actually go about them and really the logistics of the question instead of actually focusing on the question itself. These question types are quite well defined and they appear again and again and again. The only thing you need to know is how to get through these questions, and that can happen with practice. So know all of these 14 question types that appear on the test. I have already created a video where I'm solving these questions in front of you live, and you can see me do that so that you understand what is the right strategy to solving them. But even though you may not watch that directly, or if you want to watch, you can always go onto this channel and watch it. But the goal is you know all the questions. You really need to focus on understanding those 14 types so that you know that your IELTS exam is going to be not surprising to you in terms of the kind of questions that you will get. Tip number 4, the questions are in the order of the passage. My recommendation, don't read the whole passage at once. Read one paragraph, take a look at the first question. If you can answer it, great, no problem. Otherwise, you start with the second paragraph, you basically come back to the first question then. If you can answer it, great. Otherwise, read the third paragraph. You should always proceed in that way. Once you answer question number 1, always keep question number 2 in the back of your head. That's essentially how you will understand what's going on and what you're looking for. Otherwise, you'll read the whole passage and you will have no answers at the end of it. You don't want to waste that time. Time is precious on the IELTS. Point number 5, you know that there are 3 passages on the IELTS reading section. Remember that these are in order of their difficulty. What does that mean? Passage 1 will be the easiest. Passage 3 will be the hardest of all. My advice, try to finish passage 1 in 15 minutes, passage 2 in somewhere around 20 minutes, and passage 3 in somewhere around 22 minutes. Still leaves you with a bit of time, and in general, you actually did the passages and spent the amount of time that was really required to be spent on it. Point number 6, don't reread the passage. If you're new to the IELTS or if you really don't know how to go about the reading section, you would be making this mistake. You read it again and again and again. What you want to do is understand this. No one's gonna test you on this passage that you're reading after the test. It's only for the next 10-15 minutes. So just skim through it. Don't memorize the minor details. That's okay if you forget them, because you can always come back to the passage in the next 15 minutes. But you don't need to memorize it like it's your life story. Remember? So if you don't understand certain parts, that's okay. Try to skim through it and move on and try to understand the rest of the passage. Point number 7 is to work on your weaknesses extensively. If you know that you are weak in selecting the heading kind of questions where you have so many paragraphs and so many headings to decide from, per paragraph you have to give a heading, let's say, or any other question of that type, and you find that, oh man, I'm making mistakes in this question again and again and again. Focus more on those questions. Find out passages like that have such questions and really try to tackle it, because trust me, there's nothing that cannot be overcome with practice on the IELTS, and I personally have witnessed that. I used to be weak on some of those questions, and many of my clients used to be weak on those questions, but I've seen that firsthand. People overcome it, and it's really beautiful when that happens, and I want to see that for you as well. Point number 8, underline for markers. Remember, if you're taking the paper-based test, you're going to be underlining. If you are taking the computer-based test, you're going to be highlighting. Now, what are markers and why should you use this highlight feature or this underlining that I'm telling you about? Markers are important things that you may need to come back to. Trust me, when you do a couple of IELTS passages, you're going to start getting the gist of what markers are. You would know that, hey, this is probably important. IELTS can ask me about this part later on in the questions, or it might be in one of the summary questions later on. And you actually want to do exactly that. You want to mark, highlight the important parts, and again, move on. Don't stay stuck. Point number 9, don't cross the word limit. A lot of people don't know exactly what word limits are. Let me give you an example. Let's say a question appears in front of you on the IELTS reading and it asks you to fill into it. Well, example 1, one word only. What is one word only? One word only could be Paris, but it could not be the Eiffel Tower because that's 2 words. Remember, quite simple, right? Take a look at the next one. If it says one word and or a number. Now this makes it a little bit complicated. Over here the answer could be just a number like 7. It could be a combination of a number and a word like Area 51, or it could be just a word like Boston. Let's take one more example. Let's say the test tells you that you can have 3 words or less in a blank. This means that all of these answers would be correct. You could have tower, you could have space dust, you could have New Boston area. All of these are correct answers for this blank. Remember, there are very specific word limits and you should never skip them on the test. Always read the question very carefully. Let me give you tip number 10. Remember to check for spellings. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen cases where students have the exact right answer, but what they do is they just write a little bit of a wrong spelling over there. That little bit of a misspelling that you may have can cost you the entire mark, even though your answer was potentially correct. Similarly, point 11 would be to stay ahead of the tenses. Remember the kind of tense you have to use. Usually the tense in the passage and the tense in the answer is going to be the same in most cases, but always double check. For example, if you write attracted, that might be the correct answer as opposed to writing attracting, which may not be the correct answer in a certain blank. And I know certain people have actually struggled with that, but it's very important to understand tenses are really important and you really do not need to lose marks over them. Point number 12, and this was personally also a problem for me initially, and I made a lot of mistakes and lost many points initially because of that. And I think you would relate with me on this, is don't mix up the true, false, not given questions with the yes, no, not given ones. They seem very similar, and if you've done a lot of questions, right, you do a lot of practice, you kind of start to mix them up a little bit. But remember the question, always remember to read the question very, very well, and that's how you will not face these issues. Point number 13, and this is very important, guys. If you're not sure about a question, mark it and move on. Remember, you can always come back to the question later on. But what I don't want you to do is stay stuck up on question 15 when there's probably 5 other questions ahead of you that are super simple, and then you get them wrong as well, essentially because you were so short on time towards the end of the test that you just simply couldn't focus on them, right? So remember, it's a bit difficult to let go of things sometimes, but you have to mark it and you have to move on, and then you come back to it with a fresh mind, and trust me, chances of you getting that right are much, much higher. Point number 14, get your body used to taking the IELTS. Don't just go and sit for the exam without actually practicing it and getting your body used to it. My advice, before your test, 10-15 days before your test, every day sit down, do one mock test every single day. And then when you actually go on the test day, you will know it creates a lot of difference. Your body will be used to sitting down for those 3-4 hours and actually taking the test. And you would be way less nervous than you would have been if you just initially took the test. Point number 15, if you're taking the IDP's version of the IELTS, or some countries are still continuing the British Council ones as well, go onto their website, check out their software, understand what kind of a software they use, get used to it so that on the test day you would know exactly what you're going to be dealing with. Now before you go, please help me out here. Share this video with people who really need to know these 15 tips. I know a lot of you have friends who may be taking the TOEFL. I know you have family. I know you have other people in your class that might be interested. It would really do me an honor, and it would help me create more such content like this if you could share it with them. Remember to follow us on Instagram as well, where we actually post a lot of material regarding the IELTS day in and day out. And not just regarding the IELTS, regarding studying overseas and working overseas as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you can also subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I bid you a goodbye. But thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me today.